Right, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to trust that the majority of you that are still in the room are then all probe delegates, and that all the Audit International guys managed to move over to the other room. So just for us to start like that, we are going to just then move on to the breakout for the probe audit premium. And with that, I'm actually going to just go to the caseware file. So I'm going to open the caseware file for us, and where we are going to work is I'm actually going to show you the sampling worksheet specifically. Then we're going to just do it in cost of sales, but we have a detailed session both on the substantive sampling worksheet and the control test selection or sampling worksheet in the recording. So if you've never worked on this before, please do go and have a look at the recording. Every time I want to say this session is really important for you to watch, but really if you want to use the selection sheets, it is important for you to understand where everything comes from, how to use it. So if you haven't watched the recording on these selection sheets, please do go and watch them. All right, so what we are going to do is I've mentioned that we're going to look at cost of sales. So let's maybe just firstly have a look at the lead schedule for cost of sales and just see what is included in here. Now remember, we've already audited the purchases parts of cost of sales. That's been done separately. So the raw materials, that's been done separately. All the purchases, opening stock, those things, they are all audited separately. And then also employee cost, that is all audited in the employee cost section, which we did in, I think that was module 2. So all of those are there. The only thing that actually still remains in cost of sales that we haven't audited in any other session, is the plant and machinery section that's there. Okay, so there's a balance, plant and machinery, 830,896 Rand and 33 cents. That is also not just any plant and machinery, but still plant and machinery relating to cost of sales. Good. So now what we are going to do is we are going to add in a substantive sampling worksheet, and then we are going to go and select items there. But now let's just go and look at the client's information before we get to that. So this one here is where I actually just double checked myself again this morning as I was preparing. So I'm actually going to delete this one. We want to start a brand new one when we do that work. But let's go to the supporting documents first and see where is the plant and machinery general ledger. Right, so there's our general ledger, plant and machinery, and switching that one in there. Good. So this here is then plant and machinery. We've got wrap-up manufacturing, plant and machinery account, right? And you might remember we included the steps also in the videos. For those of you that watch the videos, the steps here is remove the items that are not part of the population being tested. We want to test all the debits, all the expenses, all the debits for plant and machinery. The credits we will still have to test. Okay, we can't just ignore the credits. That's not going to work, but we will have to test the credits separately. So let's just have a look. Thankfully, our account actually has very few credits. There are only those 3 lines. So I'm just actually going to remove them manually. Literally just cut and paste them somewhere else. Oh. Good, like that. And then I can delete those 2 rows. And then the last one that I'm going to delete will be this one here. And, oh, goody gracious me. Press the V, not some other thing. Okay, so those are the 3 line items that have credits. Let me just clean this one up there as well. Good. So now, if we then actually take all of these debit entries, we should be able to get to the total of the debits. Right, so how do we do that? Here, take the auto sum under editing, just click auto sum. Make sure, especially when you've got a long list of items like here, for example, or even longer ones, then make sure that your formula goes up all the way to the top. It is going all the way to the top. Also, I'll click enter. That gives me 944,300 Rand. Now you might say, but hang on, that's not the balance that we're auditing. I know. So the balance that we're going to be auditing is not the 830 so much. We're going to be auditing the 944,000. Yes, the 944,000 minus, let's just do this one auto sum as well. That's the net. So if I then take the 940, which is our total year, and I deduct, so I'll take the 940 minus the total of my credit entries, and that will then give me the 830,000 that we are auditing. So that looks good. That is, we now know we've taken out all of the credits. We've included all the credits in the total. We've included all the debits in the total. Right, so that's good. So the population that we will be testing is the 943,000. I'm going to add that to the right-hand side. Okay, good. So that's what we're going to audit. We have a lot of entries here. That's fine, not to worry. When we're now going to, so the cost of sales balance is that 830,000. We could include the 830,000, or we can actually just refer to the part that we are going to be selecting from. And then the working paper, we'll have a separate working paper where we're going to explain the other three items. That's the Excel. Now going back to our caseware, we now want to include a worksheet here. So let's see what the worksheet looks like. You might remember, or you might have seen in the past, right at the bottom, after all of the working paper sections, you have section 900. And section 900 includes blank documents, template documents. So you've got a blank work program, which we don't need. We want to select substantive items to test for cost of sales. So that's the document we want to use. When we are copying and pasting in the caseware document manager, I always prefer to use my, what is the word now? To use my keyboard, Control-V, Control-C, or, yeah, and then make very sure that I'm literally standing with the mouse where I want to do it. Because otherwise, if I just Control-V, Control-C anywhere, I might go into one of these other folders, which is not the intention. All right, so I'm going to select the substantive testing worksheet, Control-C, or if you want, you can right-click and say copy. Where's my copy? There we can go. Copy, that's fine. And then I'm going to go to cost of sales, and either there then say right-click paste, or I'm going to stand on cost of sales and Control-V and paste the document. Right. Remember now, what we see is exactly a copy of the document we had before, only the numbers moved on one step further. We can't, this document is a template, and the template is almost saying, like, I don't know what my name is. I don't know what my ID number is. I cannot work the way I should be working if I don't know which section I belong to. Currently, it's got a 90. 90 says you're a template. You can't work. So we need to right-click on that document and change the properties of this document. In terms of properties that we need to change, we will see the number itself is what gives the indication. So 90 says template, but our section for cost of sales, let's see, cost of sales, 720. So we are going to tell this document, you now belong to 720. And we're going to see very shortly why it's important to get the section number correctly. Right. Then in terms of the identifier, I really like to also have the identifier very similar to that. So I might also then actually add that in there. Yeah, let's make it 720. Like that perhaps, and then something like that to make sure that it does actually identify the right number. So now at least my 720 there. If you want, you can even make it 72021. Then you'll always know what the identifier is. Okay. This is not so critical, the identifier with case view documents. But when you have Excel working paper examples, earlier on someone asked about the related party working paper. Let's say we've got working papers like those that we use especially multiple times in the document. Then if this identifier is the same, it's almost like it's going to override itself all the time. So Ideally, your identifier should also be unique. And I like best practice to have the identifier be very closely related to the document number so that if I need to find it later, I can actually find it. And if I say find it later, I literally mean go and find it in my documents and so forth. Okay. You know what the caseware folder looks like if you need to go and find that. Good. Right. So now I've told this document it is going to act like a cost of sales document. When I now open this document, just give it a second to open up. It's still taking a second to open up. And there's the Excel, the Excel as well. Okay, so now we can work with this. I'm going to change or close my document map slightly, just make it slightly thinner so that we can clearly see. I'm going to increase the zoom so that we can just at least see that a bit better. Good. So first of all, what are we doing in this test? Briefly describe the test to be performed. So I'm going to just document here from work program. You're going to take the work program step that you're going to perform and document it here. Either reference it to that step number or actually literally duplicate the information here. Right. Then next up, we are going to, let me close the document now completely. It asks us then for the population that is going to be tested. Now, what we can do here is we can go and select the actual lead schedule. Now, what happened here, because we've told this document it is going to act like a cost of sales document, we only have the cost of sales lead schedule total as an option here. But what we have here now is it shows the full cost of sales of 88 million. We're not going to test the full 88 million here. We are only going to test, and you can almost say like plant and machinery cost of sales, if you want something like that. You could even include the account number from the lead schedule, something like that, to make it clear what we are testing. And then I'm going to include the balance of 944 and 300 Rand. That is the total debits that I'm going to test. That's the population that I'm testing. Oh. Which assertions are we going to test? In this case, we want to make sure that the calculation of the that the plant and machinery costs that have been expensed are accurate and correctly allocated. So accuracy, valuation, and allocation. And what you would see is that the moment I selected that, the risk and a lot of other things actually opened up at the bottom. Let me show you. If I untick it, it disappears. And suddenly lots of things open up because I've told this document you are a cost of sales document. We're auditing the assertion of AVA, and now it starts to populate itself. Then we're going to describe the unit that's going to be tested. Let's say individual expenses in the general ledger, account debits. Let's say individual expenses debit entries in the general ledger account for plant and machinery. Something like that. Okay, so everybody knows that the items I'm going to be selecting are the ones here in column F in my general ledger account. Describe how completeness of the population has been tested. So here we will say we checked that the balances agree and so forth, but also explain any other matters that we had done. What will we consider to be a misstatement? So when the supporting documentation indicates the item is not plant and machinery, in other words, not accurate, and the amount is incorrectly recorded. Right. And remember, incorrectly recorded could be too much or too little, could be including the VAT when it shouldn't be, could be excluding the VAT when it should be included, etc. The materiality for this section is recorded for us. The individually significant items is recorded for us, all coming through automatically from the document. So performance materiality or specific materiality is 800,000. And we can clearly see the total that we are auditing is more than 800,000. So we're going to have to go and select something in here. We can't leave this balance untested. The risk recorded for cost of sales is medium 1. Based on other work that we've already done, the expected assurance from this sample, based on the methodology included in probe, says we need to use a risk factor of 1.57. Right. Now it then asks us, what is the first item in this range? Now, just to show you, we're going to say how many items there are. Okay, and then we also have the total client book value. In terms of the number of items, we can also decide how we're going to select these items. If we are going to select the items just systematically, in other words, we want to select an invoice number basically, then we can literally just go and count how many items there are. If we just count this, just select all of them and see how many items there are. Okay, how many items do we have? I've got 85 entries in this list of items. I could have also literally just done another check as to say, well, 1, 2, 3, all right? And then I could have selected those 3 items. And if I want to now make that list count as long as the record is on my left-hand side, in the column to the left, I can literally just select that little block there on the right-hand side, double-click with my mouse, and it will continue that count all the way through to the bottom. And there we also confirm we've got 85 records. So if I'm just selecting documents, I can say number 1 to number 85. Okay, that means I've got 85 records. If we wanted to do monetary unit sampling, we could have also said the total value being 944,300. Good. Then we are going to remove the material and individually significant items from this population, because the probe methodology says when we go to the bottom, we first remove all the individually material and insignificant items. Material items are 800,000, individually significant items are 200,000. We don't have any items in this population that is more than 200,000 Rand. Okay. Now this list is only 85. I can easily scroll up and down and see it. How else could I identify this? Well, if I go to editing and I go to filter and sort, I could say filter. Look at this trick. If I then go to filter and I see what numbers are available. Now, obviously, there's lots of numbers, but if I go to the biggest ones, I can see the very, very biggest one is the 944,000, which is the total. We're obviously not going to sample the total. And the next biggest one after that is the 69,000, and 69,000 is obviously less than 200,000. So we don't have any material individual items, and we don't have items that are individually significant, in other words, more than our 200,000 Rand. So we can then comfortably, safely know that material individually significant items are zeros. Any unusual items that we need to test separately, well, we can kind of actually also regard those credits that we've moved out as individually or unusual items because they didn't go to the debits. We can also go and have a look at any other type of funnies. So most of these are having descriptions, supplier invoices. I can't remember that we have any journal entries, for example. That could also perhaps be. So there's a control repair. So that's not a control entry or something like that. All of these seem to be explaining what it is that we had in here. So not necessarily any funnies, any more likely to be misstated. We can't see whether any of these are perhaps imports or something like that that may be weird or wrong or strange. But if that was the case, we could also have highlighted them and tested them separately. Remember, we are talking about unusual items that are more indicative of perhaps a misstatement. All right, then we see the remaining balance is 944,085 items remaining. Based on the risk that we have, based on the values, all of those things, we now know that we need to select 2 items. How will we select them? We're going to use systematic selection. We have all the different options. Remember, I'm really not fond of haphazard, literally just haphazardly selecting. Random selection is using a random number generator. That's one thing. But haphazard is really just too haphazard. And also with haphazard selection, you cannot project the result from your sample. So we really want to try and stay away from a haphazard selection. So let's just, for this time, do a systematic selection. And we then get asked to select a random starting point somewhere between 1 and 42. Okay, why? Because our sampling interval is 42.5. So I think I also show this in the recording, but if I just quickly show you, you can do a rand between, right? And then we say, what is the bottom number? The bottom number is number 1. The top number is number 85. And then it will give us a random number generated between, sorry, not 85. We want one which is between, let me just quickly get this. We actually want a random number between number 1 and 42. What is the problem now? Oh, I should have just put a comma. A formula tells me I need a comma, not a semicolon. Good. There's my random number. Now, very important, I can't now just run off and put in number 15, because if I want to use this in my working paper, every single time I go into the formula and I type it, it's going to change. So I need to make this formula, basically, I almost want to say a dead formula. So I would say next to it, I said calculated or selected using the rand between x 1, 42 formula. Okay, so I can do it like that to indicate how did I calculate the item. There, anyone can now know, but then I need to take this formula, copy it, and and actually paste special. Goodness gracious me, let me do it slower. Copy and paste special, not the formula. I just want to paste the number. And now you'll see the formula has gone from this. It's actually changed. It's now a number. And it even changed from the 17 to the 22. Okay, so it's now literally just the number that's reflected. And anyone can see how I calculated it because I showed the rand between formula. I still didn't type formula correctly. Apologies, guys. So now I know number 22. Now I will put in here, what is the random starting point? Number 22. And then I will go to the sample side, which is now activated. Must override the calculation to open it up. And it tells me you're going to select number 22 and number 65. And that's now where the fact that we've numbered these things come in handy, because what is number 22? Number 22 is contribution, whatever that is, right? And number 65 is mesh services, blah, 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 blah. So that expense of 2,100 Rand and the other expense of 9,000 Rand, those are the two we're going to get. Now, the funny thing, of course, here is it was just a payment. So it almost looks like it was a cash, it was a cash book payment. So we'll have to go and check or payment or whatever, 794. And here at the bottom, payment 122 that we need to go and look for. Get the documentation, audit it. And in this case, we're going to just check whether the amount is correct, for example. So here we will just say recalculate, something simple like that. And then we will simply tick, is the amount correct or not? Okay. Good. So that is the documentation. Then the way that we select amounts from the using the sampling worksheet. Right. That, ladies and gentlemen, brings us then to the end of the session for today. So I want to really thank you. It's been a fantastic series to go through with all of you. Thank you for your questions, your participation, for your excitement about Kahoot. we will definitely make sure that next year we are using Kahoot a little bit more. It just took us a while to get everything sorted and to get this done. So thank you for everyone's participation. Thank you for everyone joining. And I hope you will enjoy the rest of your Friday. And yeah, hoping to see you next year at Audit Level 2. I'm already excited for what we are going to do next year. Thank you once again. And if you haven't completed your survey, or for some reason you didn't do it before, please follow the link in the chat. You're welcome to go do that, to complete the form. Or yeah, otherwise you can also, of course, respond to the email, that Caseware Training email address. Yes, and thank you so much. Thank you very much. Goodbye.